everybody, the Spayhar Initiative. As always, I have another fabulous guest with me today, and his name is Mr. Vincent Infante. He is a master mindset coach. He's a licensed psychotherapist and a public speaker with a passion for creating and cultivating lasting change. Exactly with what I'm all about, and when you get two minds together, it just amplifies things a lot more. You get to create that mastermind. So Vincent, thank you for coming on today, man. You got shit ton of gold nuggets to impart on the listeners out there. I got a list of questions I want to ask you. You got some good stories when it comes to Tony Robbins, and I know everybody's going to be enjoying this one. So welcome, my man.
Thanks for having me, Rob. I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully we could give the listeners some great value today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So a little background story how I came across Vincent. I I signed up for Tony Robbins and Medan is it Medanis? I can't
Yeah,
pronounce
Madonna's.
Madonna's training, and you get these emails, and within each email you have this little clip on how Tony Robbins coaches people when it comes to business or mindset. This one came down to business, and lo and behold, there's Vincent. And I listened to this clip. It's about a half hour or so, some of that, over and over and over again, because there's so much good information within that time frame. And I've from when I saw that video, I did a little bit of research on Vincent and looked at, his background, how he's progressed from that video. And man, this guy's got a lot of good stuff going on for him. And I don't want to ruin it. I want him to tell everybody out there, how everything has come to pass. But Vincent, let's start, man, with the Tony Robbins clip. How did how did things go down? You told me a little bit before we started recording, but I want to hear it again.
Yeah, well, and I'll give it a little more context too. So for the listeners, if any of you are not familiar with Tony Robbins, which by the way, I found that there are people out there who have no idea who he is, which is so interesting to me. But I
Really?
think it's because we're in the personal development space, right? So let's just for argument's sake, let's explain it to maybe you get a listener in here who's not familiar and just starting to get into personal development. But Tony Robbins is the world's #1 life and business coach. He's probably a billionaire at this point. He helps scale people and businesses, and he's the best at what he does, my opinion. He's also the biggest inspiration as to why I quit being a psychotherapist, actually. So there's another little
Oh,
fun story. Yeah, I
okay.
have this formal background in formal training in psychotherapy. I did psychotherapy for over 10 years, stopped kind of believing in it as a business and started looking for better ways to help people. And that's actually when I stumbled upon Tony Robbins. I didn't even know who he was myself.
Oh.
And like most therapists, I thought he was full of crap because he's a life coach, and coaches are full of crap because they don't have degrees and certifications and pieces of paper like I do. So as the skeptical therapist, I was like, my girl was listening to him and she's like, baby, he's amazing. She's like, you need to hear what he's talking about. I'm like, he's a life coach. I'm not going to listen to him. But she's playing him in the background, and we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. So I couldn't avoid hearing this big raspy voice like, oh, you guys got to do this. And I'm like, what do I got to do? And I start hearing a lot of the stuff that he's talking about. But Tony is the only life coach that's ever piqued my interest because he's a master of psychotherapy. And a lot of people don't know that. When he was talking, despite the fact that he was talking about things and he created his own concepts, he actually has this in-depth knowledge of all types of psychotherapy. And so I had really gotten curious, like, who is this guy that calls himself a life coach, but knows more than the average therapist I talked to? See, I had a lot of trouble as a therapist because I would always argue with my bosses because I thought I knew better than they did. And sometimes I did. Sometimes I was arrogant. Sometimes I didn't. But for the most part, I really did because I had a deep love for therapy. And I've always really taken it to that next level if I want to learn about this stuff. So when I hear Tony Robbins talking, I'm like, okay, this guy's actually fascinating. And then he's talking about how he's helping people that have been in therapy for 20 years. And I'm like, I'm not even doing that. So what the hell is this guy doing? And so I got super curious and I enrolled in the Robbins Madonna's training. And then from there, after I got that cert, I started really doubling down on building a coaching business. And I was also a former FDNY firefighter. And at the time that I was doing coaching, I was also a firefighter. But I wanted to step full time into entrepreneurship. And once I did, and I transitioned out of the fire department, I enrolled in all these different Tony Robbins courses, and they're phenomenal. And one of them was business mastery. However, I also didn't know what the hell I was doing. I have no background in business. I'm a 9 to 5 guy. Sit in the office, or more appropriately at the time, go to the fire station and just get paid a regular amount, doing regular work and all that. So stepping into entrepreneurship was a massive shock, and I didn't know what I was doing. So I said, I need some help. And I rolled in Tony Robbins' mastery program, which is you get all of his events. But business mastery was the one I went to and I was most excited about. And he's calling. He's like, who wants intervention in the business? I'm like, me, raising my hand. But there's over 30,000 or 40,000 attendings at this one, and it was virtual too. So now it's over Zoom. He can't even see everybody. I'm like, there's probably no shot I'm going to get called on. And he called on one person, and their business model was pretty simple. And then they transition out. And then he's like, we got time for one more. So I was like, I'll still raise my hand. Why not? He didn't call on me. I was like, of course he wasn't going to call on me. I mean, there's 40,000 people here, and he's got all these Zoom rooms. It's like, there's no way. So some woman comes up, and she's doing the whole and she's like jumping around and crazy because Tony just called on her, but you can't hear her. Nobody could hear her. Her sound wasn't working. And she was frantically clicking, trying to get the sound working. And Tony was like kind of butting his guys, like, let's get the sound working. And Tony's a little impatient when it comes to his events because he wants things running smoothly. And so his impatience sort of worked out, because after a few minutes of him sitting there and smiling, which was probably even too long for him, he's like, all right, we're going to bring somebody else up. We'll don't worry. We'll figure it out. We'll come back to you, but we're going to bring somebody else up right now. I was like, guys, let's see somebody else. How about Vincent Infante? And I'm like, holy shit, that's me. And then he proceeded to give me this great intervention, which was here. Yeah, I think you said it before. It's like 30 or 40 minutes or somewhere around there. So I got a 1-to-1 sort of coaching session from Tony Robbins to start off my coaching career. Which, another piece of backstory, was actually at this time things were really rough for me in entrepreneurship, and I felt like maybe I made the wrong choice. And so it was really, if you believe in the universe, you know that everything happens the way it's supposed to. And it was really, I feel a little choked up right now, but it was really affirming right when I felt like I was failing and that I should quit, that the universe moved and Tony Robbins called on me to give me help in my business at the time where I was like, maybe I need to go back to getting a 9 to 5 because I'm just not good at this. And so that was a really amazing moment as I get to retell that story, which nobody asked me about. So thank you. Thank you a lot, Rob, for
No.
making a man get teary-eyed on the podcast.
Apparently I have an knack for that. So there you go. The streak continues. No, it's awesome, and I appreciate you telling that story. And you said one thing there that is what I like to talk about a lot, and when it comes to entrepreneurship and how we are not built for that. We're not programmed for that.
Yeah.
And when you put your mind to it, you can program yourself to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to have that. I mean, the training, all that helps, but when you educate yourself, understand vocabulary, understand your mindset and how ego works, how obstacles are generational. Those are programs that get in your way to keep you from moving forward. We can surpass that, but it's the commitment to changing all that a lot of people have those blocks. It's like, I want to, but I can't. I don't think I can. And that's where you and I come in. Like, I haven't been doing this for decades, but with the knowledge that I have, if I'm not able to impart this on other people, I feel like I'm doing them a disservice, especially in a world today that's very divisive. Like, you can see everything that's happening in this world. People are afraid to speak up because of fear of reprisal, fear you're going to lose friends, all that kind of stuff. You have a voice. Stand up, stand out, speak up, speak out. Make that change. When you change within yourself, it's a rippling effect. It'll change externally as well. As within, so without. Right? So I know you and I can, impart a lot of knowledge here on other people, and I want to ask some more questions to you about your background. You mentioned you were part of the fire department in New York, and you were doing that during the vid pandemic. And while you were doing that, you were starting your business, right? How
So
were
as an in, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I
And I
was
was
going to say,
cutting
like,
you off.
were you able to kind of, with what you've seen being a firefighter and growing the business of coaching, were you able to like meld the two? Like, did you see different things that you can like, hey, I can use this in coaching?
So it's interesting. I always tell people, and it's true, but I had 3 careers in 3 years. I transitioned from being a psychotherapist to a firefighter to a full-time entrepreneur slash coach.
Hmm.
And each one kind of prepared me differently. To your point, I actually think that the fire department taught me more about how to be an entrepreneur than honestly anything else. Because as a firefighter, just to go through the training, you get a bit broken down, but you have to. You have to go through massive hardship, and you're supposed to. And I think in today's world, there's standards for hardship that are starting to decrease, and they shouldn't, because the hardships of becoming a firefighter actually prepared me for the hardships of entrepreneurship and what it's going to be like to start a business and go through all of that pain and the ups and downs and the craziness. And that's how it prepared me. When I look at has the fire department spilled into my work, it definitely did. And there's a few things, like I have some stories from being in the fire department that I usually will tell clients, mostly because of the fact that a lot of my clients are entrepreneurs and business owners. And I think that there was massive parallels in there. But the biggest part is that fire department taught me a lot about leadership. It taught me a lot about identity. It taught me a lot about cohesiveness and culture and community, most importantly. And so I think the best ways that the fire department really shaped just how I interact with clients is challenging them to go through their hardship more. As a therapist, it was interesting because I felt like though I would challenge people, I think as a therapist, there's a lot of affirmation and validation. And reason being is that therapy is really meant to help people kind of jump back into their past and create some clarity and explore things. And that usually does require some level of validation and understanding and helping people look at clarity, right? Because to understand things, you don't really need to be challenged on it all the time. Sometimes you do, but to look back at your experiences, you want to sometimes affirm and validate so that people could get to, oh yeah, like this is the way I was thinking, or this is how I view things, or this is what's happened to me, and this is what I've experienced. And that's fine. But in coaching, I've really found that the biggest part of coaching is about challenging people and challenging them to elevate their standards in their life, which to some degree is going to challenge them to go through hardship.
Hmm.
And so learning what I learned in the fire department, I think has given me a different perspective of the need for getting people into their hardship and helping them actually walk through that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you on that, and I like. I don't say I like. Okay, I will say this. I do like triggering people because when I'm having these conversations, I can tell when people are being self-honest with themselves, right? So if I'm helping someone having this conversation, trying to help them walk through the point, like you were saying, you have to be a little bit more direct and ask the questions that'll trigger them. And more often than not, it is stuff that has happened in the past, generational trauma, so to speak. And
Sure.
those are the things that you need to come face to face with, understand it, forgive it. When you forgive that, you forgive yourself, validate yourself, then you can move forward without being reactively triggered. Because we, how everybody gets reactive and to certain situations, they get upset and like, there's a reason for that because there's something that's happened in your past that's really touching that, touching that point. That's really, plucking the string and getting you going.
Right.
It's digging deep, asking those questions and saying, okay, this is the problem. Let's look at this. And it's a lot. It's not comfortable. change is never comfortable, right? And I find that doing that, it's very, very helpful for the client to really, be honest with themselves and consistently be honest with themselves and move forward.
You,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say you can't do anything without a level of honesty. And that's the biggest thing that some people try to shy away from, even in the work. And I've seen it a lot. They'll get a therapist, they'll get a coach, they'll have a mentor, and they're still just not fully honest. And then it's like, why are you even here? And I think that's something for anyone who's listening to this. If you're not being honest and you have somebody who's supporting you in your life, just take a minute and ask yourself, why, like, what's the point? You're wasting your time, you're wasting their time. Why are you showing up to have a conversation to get no results? Like, what do you believe you're actually getting out of that? Honesty is the core thesis for how everything and anything could be built in this life. So, the question to your listeners.
Absolutely. No, that's a great question. It's a very good question. Like, if you want things in your life to change, you got to change things in your life, right? It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
As simple as that. So do you tailor your approach or your coaching approach to each individual differently? Or is there like a common ground? Like, is there one thing that you stick to help each person?
So my approach is very dynamic. I don't believe in having a standard. Like, you get a lot of coaches out there that are like, oh, it's take my course. My course works for everyone. I don't really believe that that's true. I know it's actually, I'm not even going to say I don't believe it. I know that's not true. It literally truly cannot be true. And the reason is that you have, I think there's 12 different learning styles. You have everybody with their own set of predetermined understandings, issues, experiences, circumstances. You have everybody coming from different walks of life. And though there are certain constants and truths to this universe, you can't get down to those by doing the same thing with everyone anyway. You have to learn how to connect with people. You have to learn how to build rapport. You have to learn how to look for cues, verbal, nonverbal, facial, physical. Like, there's so much to account for that
Yeah.
any coach, therapist, mentor, I don't care who they are, anyone who tells you they have the way, don't listen to them. Like, immediately don't invest, don't believe it, because it's not physically or logically even true. It just won't be. Now, if you have somebody that says, listen, I have this very dynamic approach. I work with people, but I can't say that I have a specific way of working with everyone because everybody needs something different. That's the guy to get a little more curious about. How could you work with that guy? Because that guy could probably help you. And I think that so many times, people are desperate and people will be like, oh, I really need to get out of my pain and my problem. So somebody who's guaranteeing the certainty that their course and their service is the way will really stick out to you if your problem is painful enough. But that's probably the guy you got to be the most cautious about. So in my work, I'm very dynamic. I actually use a hybrid of therapy, mentoring, and coaching with all of my clients. And when they need, what they need is how they get it. I don't say, hey, you're going to come in and for the first month, we're doing therapy. And then the second month is going to be mentoring. And then the third month is coaching. It's like, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to onboard you. The only standard thing I do with all of my clients is an onboarding process in which I've created an assignment for them through my years of experience as a therapist and a coach that actually encapsulates that. So as a therapist, I used to do these things called psychosocials, which was a deep dive into every developmental stage of a person's life. I found that some of that really was unnecessary. And so now what I do is I've created my own version of that mixed with a different form of questionnaire of a coach or a mentor might ask, and it's all into one homework assignment. So when a client onboards with me, that's the only standard thing they'll ever do. And then from there, we start just picking apart pieces of their past, their present, their future, what they want, how they want it. And then we start really creating a roadmap. And then it's just very dynamic from that point forward. So I think being able to meld multiple modalities and tools and skills is what's really important for helping people achieve change. Additionally, the biggest thing that I will add in there that I do go over with every single client is aspects of self mastery. Like, if somebody's coming to work with me, what they really want is they want to learn how to master themselves. Like, there's a lot of other things that they could do, But that's the thing I love to do with people. So I love to teach it. So I'm also very clear. It's like I could help you with anything, but I also want to teach you this thing because I think this thing is phenomenal. And so that's like kind of the two standard things I do, but there is no course or this happens at this time or this date. It's like we're committed to showing up, and how you show up is what you get.
Right, right. So when you onboard your clients, um, do you find that commitment is a big issue? As everybody says, I want to change, I really, really do, but then when it comes really down to it, to do the work, they're like, no, it's too much, or it's just like we talked about, it's triggering. I can't come face to face with this. I don't want to do it. Do you come across a lot of people who are less like, yes, or, oh, no, it's way too much?
Commitment isn't an issue for me. Um, onboarding if I'm onboarding somebody, they're already a client, right? So they're already committed. People have to work with me for a minimum of 3 months. Like there's a package. We don't do week to week. We don't do month to month. We don't do a let's see what happens. It's like you're either in it or you're out. I don't do 1 foot in, 1 foot out with people.
I'm the
And
same
when
way.
I first started coaching, I was doing the therapy model, which is like, yeah, we could schedule week to week and there's no commitments if you want to get out of it and blah blah. I don't do that anymore because your people, for all of you listeners, this is probably important for you to think about too. You're going to show up how you're allowed to show up. If I don't set the standard that you are in this for a minimum of 3 months and we're meeting X amount of times and this is what's happening and this is how it goes, then I'm already doing a disservice to you as a coach because I'm not challenging you to have a standard. If I say we could just meet whenever we want to meet and we'll leave it up in the air, and if you want to meet weekly or biweekly or whatever, hey, you're coming to me, here's my package. Now what I could do is I could be flexible with people. I always tell people if you want to work with me, price is never the issue. The issue is your commitment. Because I could be very flexible on price. You won't get the full coaching package, you won't get my full amount of time, you won't get the full sessions, but we can dial it down to a point that it will be within your budget. And now it's you have to determine if you want to make it work. So I'll ask people, I'll say, is the issue with signing up right now? Is it that you don't want to do this? Or is it that you can't afford to do this? Because we could always work on the money, but I can't do crap with you if you don't want to do this.
Right.
So he's like, if we could just be honest, like, let's not waste each other's time. I was like, because here's the thing. I also have a very busy life. I have a few other businesses I run. I have a 2-year-old daughter. I have a woman that I love. Like, there's a lot of things in my life. And then I like doing things too. I love going to the gym. I love going hiking. I have a lot of interest in hobbies. So
Mhm.
let's be honest. I don't need your money. I have a lot of things I'm doing. What I need is somebody that I feel energized by. If you're going to show up and you're going to half-ass this, do not waste my time because I'd rather literally go for a walk than make money spending time with somebody I don't want to talk to. And
Yeah.
so I think that's also a blessed place to be in business, but that's also a standard that I set. I'm very keen on like, let's not waste time because I'm going to make money on this because there's a lot of value I could provide, but that's what you're paying for. You're not paying me money. You're paying for 14 years of experience, hundreds of thousands of dollars invested, and all the education I have. That's what you're paying for. It has nothing to do with me. You would have to pay for this stuff anyway. So you could either pay me and collapse your time frame and you could get it, or you go do all the stuff I did and you get it yourself, and that's fine too. But that's kind of how I look at it. So it's like if you're paying me to work with me, you're just paying for the knowledge, the experience, the value. And so then the question is, do I want to give that to you? Do I want to spend my time with you because I want to enjoy my life too?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that a lot of that stuff starts to overcome these commitment issues with people.
Yeah. It's an interesting point of view, actually. I never thought about that when it comes to the lack of commitment, and it's like, I don't want to work with you. I was like, I never thought about it from that vantage point. It's really cool that you say that. Um, is there any success stories that you're able to share, based on your coaching style? I
Yeah.
know there's that confidentiality, but obviously don't have to name names or anything. But if you're able to share a success story on based on how your coaching style is, that'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to. I even have testimonials on my website, so some people don't really care about sharing. And I think that's always the cool thing about coaching is, and very different in that aspect, is that you can kind of get people to share. In therapy, people are a lot less likely to put. So, for instance, I have video testimonials, and then I have some people that have written testimonials, and those were the people that primarily came to me because they wanted a heavier therapeutic approach.
Mhm.
And so it's funny, they were like, I'd really rather not put my name and my face, and like, it's like, okay, cool. And then my coaching clients are like, hell yeah, man, I want to tell the world about you. So it's always so interesting. And I have one of my favorite clients who, and hold on, you're all my favorite clients. That's why I work with you guys. But this is one of my favorite success stories to tell. So one of my clients, he came to me, and he's been in and out of therapy for about 15 years. And it was funny because the initial reason he came to me was because he had stopped working with his therapist. They had like a really, so it was such a freaking weird thing that was going on there, but he basically stopped going to her because it was just a weird thing. And so he's like, yeah, I'm actually looking for a therapist. I'm like, oh, cool. Because we met and he was like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I do mindset, mental performance coaching. He's like, oh, that's cool. He's like, but I'm kind of like looking for a therapist. I'm like, oh, I'm also a therapist. He's like, oh, really? I was like, yeah. So we wound up kind of opening that door to a further conversation. And he's been in and out of therapy for like 15 plus years, ever since he was younger. Yeah, he's in his mid 30s, and he had been diagnosed with depression, anxiety, panic disorder. He was on, I think, two different medications to control them. And we have worked together, I want to say about 3 to 4 months. And I told him a lot of what I'm going to do is I'm really going to challenge you in a way that probably your therapists have never done before. It's like, because there's some stuff I really do here that's different. It's like, don't get me wrong, I want to learn about your past, but I also don't care enough about it to stay there with you. Most therapists will. I'm not. I was like, I only need a few things that I need to understand from your past, and then from there it's all forward. So he said, okay. So it's like, are you willing to try something different? Because you've been doing therapy 15 years and you're on medications and have these diagnoses. It's like, what if we could change that for you? Would you be open to trying to figure that out? And he said, sure. So he's like, well, therapy hasn't been doing the greatest for me. Why not? So we start working together, and it's a bit rough. Now, all of my clients can text me 24/7. So part of what I do with my clients is, because I work with very high performing individuals like entrepreneurs, executives, CEOs. Um, I have a few other coaches that want to elevate their coaching business. I'm coaching the coaches, but I'm always working with like these high performers, these entrepreneurs, these people that really are action takers. And that's why a lot of the transformation my clients receive, it's it's really not me. Honestly, it's like never us, right? If you think about it, Rob, what we do is we don't create change. We facilitate a space for change to occur. But a lot of the times the change can't occur because if you're trying to reflect to somebody, they're always going to see what's there. And that's where therapy could start falling short with people. That's where therapy starts failing people. A lot of the times, if people get to the awareness, that's fine, but they need to have something else to do with that awareness, or they're going to stay stuck. My client is a super motivated guy. He runs a business. He's a hard worker. He's an action taker, but he was cheated, in my opinion, because he wasn't given the skill set, the tool set, and the knowledge set he needed to actually transform his life. So when he came to me, part of why I say I implement mentoring is because I spend a lot of time teaching my clients concepts, how the brain works, why it works the way it works, why you think the way you think, why you do what you do. I don't just create awareness, I create clarity and understanding and education. And so as I'm teaching him these things, and I'm like, hey, this is why you're having a panic attack. This is how you stop a panic attack. This is what you do. And I fed him step by step, as opposed to being in your traditional therapy route, which is like, oh, why do you think you're experiencing panic? And then what do you typically do when you have a panic? Like, don't get me wrong, I asked those questions, but then that was it. I don't care about them anymore. And
Mhm.
so after about 3 months of working with this guy, things were really going well. And he started gaining a lot of information and understanding, but he was also doing, every time I gave him a homework assignment, he did it. And this is what I want to stress to your listeners. If you guys are hiring someone and you're not doing the work, again, stop wasting your time, your money, and stop wasting their time and energy, because they could give it to somebody that deserves it. And so after 3 months, we started seeing great changes. After 6 months, his life was really wildly changing. After a year, we had the greatest conversation. He came off all of his medication because he didn't need it anymore. He was able to stop panic attacks before they happened. He didn't like, he knew how to redirect before he would even get into that state. He no longer was holding on to his identities of being depressed, anxious, and having these panic attacks. He literally was able, and this is part of my personal story too, where I ditched my diagnosis when I was younger. I was diagnosed with anxiety, depression, panic disorder. I was highly, had a lot of suicidal ideation, self harm. And my therapist wanted me on meds. I was in therapy for years. It never helped me. And so I learned to ditch my own diagnosis. And that's part of what I was teaching him. And so after that year, stopped identifying with his diagnoses, ditched all of his medication because he didn't need it. He literally had perfect, at that point, near perfect emotional regulation. And I would say, that's one of my favorite stories. Because this guy was in and out of therapy for 15 years without seeing any change and just being on these medications. And then after a year, his life was like completely transformed. I mean, now we're really heavily focused on his business. He doesn't really need the mental part as much, which is great. I'm so happy about that. Now we're just focused on his business growth, his business trajectory. He's building his personal brand. He's building his other business. He's doing so much, and I'm so proud of him. And it's my favorite success story. But the biggest thing that I always highlight in any success story that my clients have is it's because of them. Like any story that I could share with you, because I've had multiple people like this now, 15, 20 years in therapy, better results with me in 3 months, but it's not me. It's their action takers, they're doers, but they were missing something. So,
Yeah.
word to your listeners, you guys might also be action takers and doers, and you guys might be putting in the effort and the work. You just might be missing a skill set or a tool set or a knowledge set. And maybe whatever you're doing right now, you need to switch it up a little bit. So seek what you need and really put in the effort.
Damn. There was a pin in here. I'd drop it, but I don't have one. But no, that is an awesome story, man. And again, thank you very much for sharing that. And just hearing that is like, yeah, we have the knowledge and we want to educate people out there, and they just need that little bit. They need the tools, the support, the relationship, and the understanding that, hey, I can do this. You know, being self-honest, take that self-responsibility. And it's a nice little segue into my next question about accountability. And you probably answer that within that story. A lot of people in society nowadays are quick to blame now. Blame, blame, blame. It's like they're just pointing the finger elsewhere. And if you're pointing the finger elsewhere, more often than not, you want to do one of these. You want to look at yourself too and take accountability of the things that are happening in your life. And that story, that guy took accountability. He knew
Heavy.
he knew what had to be done in order to move forward. You provided him all the tools and the education. And we stress education a lot in our household, and how important it is to understand yourself, understand vocabulary, understand life. And it's just so powerful. So when it comes to accountability, like, can you add more on the importance of accountability in the coaching process and how that will support clients? Like I said, you really answered it with the last story, but maybe there's a little bit more you can add about accountability, because I find that's a very important aspect of coaching and for clients who are looking for help.
Yeah. There's a lot more I could add. So I'm glad you asked that, Rob. Rob, you and I are probably about the same age. So I'm going to go ahead and
Thank
assume,
you.
of course, I got you, my man. I'm going to go, and for anyone who can't see him on video, he's a handsome bastard too. So
Everybody on Spotify, yes, good looking here. Good looking. Face for radio. All right.
face that his mother and everybody else loves. So there's this great saying that I'm sure you've heard, and I heard it a lot growing up. You're up shit's creek without a paddle. Probably heard that term.
Yep.
For those of you that are in the younger generation, well, I'll explain that saying real quick.
Hmm.
Up Shit's Creek without a paddle means you're screwed because you're in this boat, you're going up this river, and you have no way of steering. My life was seemingly me always being up Shit's Creek without a paddle. That's how I felt. I lived as a victim for most of my life. And we didn't get into my personal story today, and that's okay. I don't really care. Everybody always asks me about it. I'm so bored of talking about it. But I felt like for most of my life, I was a victim. I was always bullied. I was always outcasted. I was always ostracized. I got thrown in trash cans. I got pushed into lockers. I was a little bit chubby and I was made fun of that for everything, honestly, everything you can imagine. The things that happen in those movies that you're like, that's ridiculous that people get bullied this way. That can't be real. Actually happened to me. That's
Mhm.
my life. And so my whole life was living in a state of victimhood and just why me? Why does everyone suck? What if, if everybody else could change my life, be great. Just really going up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. But the life-changing moment for me was when I found an oar.
Hmm.
OAR. Ownership, accountability, responsibility. If you find your oar, you can get back to steering your ship. And sometimes we lose it, right? If anyone's actually ever been on a river, doing river rapids, things like that, I've done it, by the way, like physically done river rapid stuff. It's exhilarating. But you know what happens sometimes? Paddle falls out of the boat. And then I kid you not, there's actually a rule. Actually, Rob, you might have experienced this or known this. So I went to Thousand Islands. You said you're in the Niagara area.
Yes.
So I went to Thousand Islands. That's where we did the rapid. And one of our instructors, we thought he was insane because somebody dropped their paddle out of the boat, their oar, and the guy jumped in after it. He just left us. We didn't even know what's going on. The instructor left us. He grabs it, swims back to the boat, comes on. We're like, dude, what the hell? He's like, oh yeah, it's a thing we got with all the instructors. If you lose an oar and somebody else gets it, you have to buy them a case of beer. He's like, I wasn't doing that. I was like, okay. So what happens is, if I go back to the illustration, is sometimes you might be up Shit's Creek without an oar because maybe you dropped it at some point. And if you're a listener and you're in victimhood at the moment, I want to remind you, you dropped your oar, but you could always jump in and go get it. And then you could start steering your ship again. So ownership, accountability, and responsibility is what started changing my life and changes the trajectory of so many others' lives, because ownership is the understanding that your present is the way it is because of you. Every decision you've made, every reaction you've had to every circumstance you've encountered, how you've decided to go about creating perspectives and beliefs and what experience means to you. That's your ownership moment. You need to own everything from your past so that you can get to the second part, which is acceptance and accountability, the A. Acceptance and accountability puts your past at peace and now challenges you to get into, I am now accountable for everything that has happened. So what do I have to do right now to start shifting my entire life? And then it comes to the R, which is understanding that you have a responsibility to create the future you want. It's funny, if you break down responsibility, it actually sounds more interesting than the word itself. If you pause, you have response ability. You have the responsibility to change the outcomes and trajectories of your life based on, well, this talks about my 5 aspects of mastery. So Rob's getting the juice right now. There's only 5 things in this world that you can control. And this is the core thesis of what I teach people on self-mastery, is you can only control your thoughts, your behaviors, your actions, your emotions, and your language. Your responsibility is going to be found in those 5. If you want to change the trajectory of your life forever, you need to get very clear on how you are living with these 5 things. How will you shift these 5 things? How will you challenge yourself to operate differently and be responsible for your future? Because your future will literally be based on only these 5. And so if you want to start regaining control of your life, if you are currently living as a victim, if you've ever been a victim, and even right now, if you're having trouble steering your ship, grab your oar and start changing the trajectory of your life forever.
All right. Anybody listening or watching out there, you just got some serious gold nuggets there. Like, like you just said, man, brought the juice. Drink it. That's no, that's awesome, man. Like responsibility. Yeah, that's damn, man. I'm writing that one down.
Go for it.
Oh, it's amazing. Like, you ever hear about the concept of time loops?
Tell me about it.
You are when you're not being honest with yourself, you're not taking responsibility, accountability, you are getting this exact same thing in your life. So
Oh,
if you're in a job, for instance, and your boss is an asshole, or your coworkers are assholes as well. Relationships, you're attracting the person who's just gonna not treat you properly. You get out of that relationship, and then you get into another relationship, and the exact same thing happens. You're creating that time loop.
mm,
Why does that keep happening? Is if you really look at it, really break it down, it's the things, it's the actions, it's the behaviors, the traits, characteristics within yourself that you're doing unconsciously that is creating the exact same thing again. Hence the time loop. It's happening over and over and over again. But once you really look at it on a deeper level and say, why am I getting this again? Why is that guy an asshole to me? Let's look at this. What have I done? What have I done? Am I accepting and allowing this kind of abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse, anything like that? Let's stop that. Why am I getting that? It's because something has happened to me in the past that let's fix that. And man, that time loop is that it will stop. Things will
yeah.
change. You will attract somebody different in your life. So it's very relatable to what you were saying, accountability and ownership and responsibility and response ability, so it's love it. Love it.
Yeah, there's one thing to that point too that I always tell people about. So I've never called them time loops, but I like that. So I'm going to use that going forward. But I always tell people it's like the universe is going to continue to put the same lesson that you need to learn in front of you, even
Mm-hmm.
if it's in different things. Like when people are telling me, "Oh, I keep meeting these crappy women," I'm like, "No, you don't. You're still not the right kind of man. So you keep getting the same lesson in a different package." And until you learn how to grow, and this is what I'll talk about usually is if your goal is to get a very high quality woman, the thing about the goal is it's never about the goal. Like it's not about the high quality woman you want. That has nothing to do with it. The point of a goal is to actually challenge you to evolve into the person you need to become in order to live out that goal. So if you're saying you want the high quality woman, the real question is who must you become? Who is that high value man? What does he look like? What is his behaviors, his actions, his thoughts, his language, and his emotions? Like, how does he conduct himself? Because then that high quality woman will come into your life. You will actually have proper standards, proper boundaries. You'll be able to keep that high quality woman. You will be able to get that high quality woman because you've now become the man capable of having her. But in the state you're in, you will never have her because you're not that man, and you will never be capable of her. And so you will always get these women that you might deem as lower quality or lesser than because you are that man. You're getting exactly who you are in life 100% of the time.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a reflection of yourself.
Mhm.
Where does that sound? um I'm just looking at my list of questions here, and it's like, okay, we answered it. So moving on, about public speaking, and you were invited to share a speech for a virtual summit that was put on by Les Brown back in 2021. Can you share a little
Yeah,
bit of what that speech was about, and then I'll get into a couple more questions about how you came about being a speaker on stage.
sure. Yeah, that speech, well, we sort of talked about it, but not really. That speech was basically me talking about my life. The best keynotes or the best speeches are people who are willing to share. So I said before too, and I kind of alluded to this, that therapy never worked for me ever. It
Mhm.
just, I was in it my whole life and it just didn't help. My life was continuously getting worse. My diagnoses were continuously adding up. The therapy, the guy wanting to put me on medication, he kept pushing and pushing. So none of that crap ever helped me, which is also in part, I mean, there's a few reasons I became a therapist. One is because my dad's a therapist and I always admired him. But number two is because it didn't work for me. I needed to become the change I wanted to see in the world. I was like, if it's not working for me, it's probably not working for other people, right? So how can we do better? How can I be an example? Part of all of this was me having to learn how to overcome my own crap. And in the moments where it felt really dark, I would listen to motivational speakers, because when you're hearing somebody's story and you're able to see that maybe they've gone through something harder than you, or something on par with you, or just somebody's had their own hardship in life that you could resonate with, that you're not alone going through some sort of crap by yourself, it starts doing things to your mind. But like, actually scientifically, not just I think it does.
Mhm.
We have so much trouble being able to see things differently. Like, why you might have trouble in certain scenarios is because you actually already think you know what's going to come out. Think about that. The human mind stops paying attention. This is factually proven, guys. I'm not just talking opinion right now. It's factually proven that if the human mind can start to assume what's going to come out, it stops paying attention. You know what that does? That stops us from being curious. You know what that does? It stops us from listening, understanding, creating new neural pathways, and perhaps even opening up our capability to get neuroplastic. When somebody is sharing a story, you have no freaking idea what's about to come out. You can't possibly know because it's not your story. You no longer have a predetermined understanding of life because it's no longer your life. Somebody actually gets a cheat code to insert themselves into your brain differently than any other person can. So speaking was super wildly helpful for me before I even knew why it was. And so I would listen to these guys on my runs, specifically Les Brown, because he had such an infectious laugh. I freaking love his laugh. Anyone who's ever heard him, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, just go listen to one speech. You'll see. And because of that, I really wanted to pursue speaking. So I knew that if I had the opportunity to breathe life into others, like speakers would do for me, I had to take it, and I wanted to take it. But it's interesting because when people speak, there are good speakers and there's bad speakers.
Mhm.
And there's a format to speaking. There's ways to speak. I mean, you guys may or may not even be aware of it, whether you think I'm a good speaker or not. Doesn't really matter to me, but there's a lot of things that I strategically do. There's a lot of ways I speak. There's a lot of things I might emphasize. There's so much that actually goes into crafting a speech that you have no freaking idea. You might walk away from some speeches being like, that guy was insane. Then you might walk away from others where it's like, that guy, I could not wait for him to stop talking. And there's reasons. It is a skill. It is something you learn. It is something I've invested a lot of time into. I've learned under Les Brown. I've learned under Nick Santanastasso. I've joined speaking organizations. There's a lot of effort that goes into learning how to speak properly. But the biggest thing, in addition to speaking properly, is telling a good story. So my keynote is always around my story, my aspects of mastery, and building your empowered identity, or as I like to call it, internal leadership. Those are three or two to three things, because it depends on speech time and length and all that stuff.
Yeah,
But for
yeah.
the Les Brown Summit, I had a 10-minute time slot. It was my story and how you can go from turning adversity into advantage. Because everybody uses victim to victor. I had to find something better. It's adversity to advantage.
Yeah, I've been really looking more and more into the public speaking aspect, and there's one guy I follow. He's in Australia, Vin Jiang, and
My girlfriend's obsessed with him. She loves Bin Jiang. She was like, "You need to learn under him." I'm like, "I've already learned under some of the greatest speakers in the world. He's phenomenal. He
yeah,
is, but I'm okay."
just how our voice it's an insight into who we are as a person, and how you speak with your hands, the tonality of your voice, and how I like to be considered an authority. I am the authority on stage. You are here to listen to me. I have a story I want to convey. I want to show you what is possible. And with the tools and education that I have, I want to impart that knowledge on you and show you what is possible, because I see it in my wife. I see it in my kids. We home educate our kids, and how we're doing that as a family dynamic is remarkable. It's possible. And that's the message I want to convey. So I want to be the authority in that. So, and if you look at the root word of authority, it is author. We are the author of our lives. I am the author of my family, of my family's life. And that's what I want to do going up on stage. And that's the message I want to convey. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts, like how you got into that mindset about, like when you go up on stages, do you get those butterflies? Do you get nervous at all? Still like, oh, what are they thinking of me? Should I picture everybody in their underwear? Like what's going on there?
I'll answer your question with a question. How do you develop confidence? What do you think?
How do you develop confidence? Educate yourself.
Sort of. Sort of. I would agree with you to a point there. And I know this is your podcast, so we won't get into a debate. A lot of people do think it's education, which is partially the way correct. However, what I've come to really find is that it's competency. The loop of building confidence is actually a loop that is competency. Competency builds confidence, confidence builds competency, and it keeps going and going and going. And the reason being is that if you think about something you've never done before, even if you've read a book, you might still be a little shaky on it. But if you've done it 1,000 times, you probably won't have any shakiness. It'd be impossible to, right? Like you've done it so much, you could probably do it with your eyes closed. The surgeon's first day is a scary day. The surgeon's 10,000th day is another day. And I've found that to be the same thing for me. My first ever speaking engagement was on Les Brown Summit. That was scary as hell.
Mm-hmm.
More recent was a speaking engagement in front of 500 people at a college. It's called APGA. It's like a campus association thing. And you have people that come from colleges all across the US to hire speakers and all these other people. It was in front of 500 people. I felt great. I was actually surprised I wasn't nervous. I also spoke at VCon, and I had a smaller audience there because I wasn't on a main stage. I was on like a side activation. One of the guys I knew, he was doing a whole bunch of like panels and speakers, and he wanted me to come. And even there is a smaller audience, so I was like, oh, maybe I just wasn't nervous because it was such a small audience. I need a bigger audience. That might make me really nervous. And then I get the bigger audience, and I'm like, oh man, maybe this will make me nervous. I'm like, oh crap. And I get there, I'm like, oh, this didn't make me nervous either. And it was so interesting because I started speaking during COVID. I started speaking when there was no physical audiences. And now that I started getting into physical audiences, I was imagining I'm going to start being really, really nervous because I've never spoken in front of actual people before. But it's funny because I think the reason I haven't been nervous is because of the fact that if you ask me how many times have I spoke, at this point, I want to say I'm close to maybe 200 engagements. Now, here's the thing though. Sometimes, and Rob, you probably know this even from working with your own clients. The funny thing about life is that our expectations can get in the way. When people think speaking engagement, you think big crowds, people, audiences, you're on a stage.
Mm-hmm.
Rob, this is a stage.
Yep.
I've done hundreds of podcasts, literally. And when I say hundreds, I'm sorry, I'm exaggerating. I've done probably close to 130 or more podcasts. Not even exaggerating that one though. I've done tons of virtual summits. I've done a whole bunch of online webinars and workshops. And I have done in-person engagements as well. But with that, I'm probably well over 200 speaking opportunities. And let's call it that, 200 speaking opportunities. So by the time I finally got in front of the crowds, I wasn't nervous. I know my story. I know my materials. I know what I'm going to teach. I know how I'm going to do it. I know what I'm going to do. I know the way I'm going to emphasize. I know the way I'm going to explain it. I know what jokes I might throw in. I know the acronyms that are going to hit because I've been on all these different podcasts and workshops and webinars. And so for you or anybody who's really looking into speaking or whatever the case is, as long as you know your stuff and you've practiced it, I would say your nervousness will subside. Unless you're an extreme introvert and you're always going to be nervous. I don't know what to tell you on that one. Or you could just build up a new personality, which is possible too. But there are so many different ways that if you continue to grow your competency, confidence will always follow. So at first I got super nervous because I never did it, but I have to say at this point it's just another day.
No, it's awesome. Yeah, and it makes total sense. Like with the education, and yes, doing it over more, the more times you do it, it's just like you said, just another day, not a problem.
That's it.
No, that's excellent. Um, so a couple final thoughts here. We're nearing the end. I know we can talk for hours upon hours upon about stuff. So final thoughts. So what are your goals for your coaching practice? You're looking to expand into different things? Or are you just content with what you're doing right now?
No.
No.
I am this is my favorite thing to tell people is to be happy yet unsatisfied. I friggin' love my life, man. I think that nobody has it better than me. I think I'm living the greatest life I possibly could, and I want so much more. So I spend every day trying to figure out how I could be 1% better because I think that's really what's important. And also being able to recognize that you want more, but even if you don't achieve it, it doesn't really matter. That's kind of the place I'm in. And I always tell people I want to impact 1 billion lives positively. And I don't actually have a real measure for that. The reason I love the billion lives idea is because of the fact that it challenges other people to come on board with me. I can't do 1 billion lives alone. Come on, Rob. But you're a part of it because you invited me on your platform. You gave me
I'm
a
with,
stage.
I'm with
You and I
you.
are sharing in this moment.
Yep.
And so that's one of the goals is to inspire and do things alongside other people to impact 1 billion lives together. That's one. Number two is I want to keep growing my coaching business. I'm really right now I'm on the verge of finishing up some copy, some videos, and then we're going to start running ads. So I'm really excited about that. I want a few more good coaching clients. From there, building communities, and these will be coming about in two ways. One is going to be mastermind style. The other is going to be group coaching, which are things that I'm already, they're actually pretty much done. Now it's just about putting the people into it, which will be as we launch the ads. So that's really exciting. So I'll have a few lower ticket offers for people that can't work with me in my one-to-one capacities. And that's actually going to be my bigger move. I love one-to-one. I'll always do it, but I'm looking to downsize my one-to-one clientele as the communities start building up. So that's a little bit of a longer term goal. And speaking, actually, interestingly enough, when I was away on a trip recently, the one where I was speaking in front of that really great audience of
Yep.
college people, I realized speaking's not that important to me right now. I have a 2-year-old daughter. I want to spend every damn minute with her. And if I'm speaking, I'm not with her because I'm out, I'm busy, I'm networking, I'm on stages. And even if they're there, I brought my family to that engagement, but I felt like I couldn't enjoy them and I couldn't enjoy the engagement. To me, it was a lose-lose. I had this cool opportunity. I got some paid speaking engagements from it, but I wasn't able to spend time with my family. So in life, the interesting thing about values is that they change quite often based on what stage of life you're in. I'm in a beautiful stage where my daughter's too, and I want to enjoy every second. So for me, I'm putting speaking on the side as long as, or I shouldn't say as long as, if I get some really great speaking engagements, those are the only ones I will take. They have to pay me well and they have to be super aligned. Other than that, I don't care. I want more coaching clients just so I can be home with my family. And I have a few other businesses that I own and I'm working on those. One's a laundromat. It's very fun. And then number two is I have a CRM company where we build out backends for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, companies. We can do anything for anybody. So it's actually been really cool and really fun. I have a few of my clients in there. Some other people are using it too. So that's been really exciting. And honestly, that's about it. That's kind of what I'm working on. That's what I'm doing.
Like only a few things, right? Not too much.
Why not?
No, that's awesome. No, that's great. And like very similar to what I'm doing in our area, and it's community building. It's
Mm.
building the communities where we're at now and getting the people together to really talk about, solutions to problems that are happening in this world right now. Like, yeah, we can complain and till we're blue in the face. That's not going to change anything, but getting together and talking about these things, understanding that there's somebody else that I can talk to that will listen to what I have to say. That is huge. But first, you really have to look within yourself and change in here before you can change externally. So yeah, we're looking at, building our communities here, and you're putting speaking on the side. I'm trying to get my speaking thing going, more, as because I have a story to share. I've told you about my wife. She's staying home. My kids, we home educate, and what they're doing and the things that they're learning. They want to build a website. They want to start their business. What 11 and 8-year-old really say that nowadays? Not not very much. It's more like, oh, I
Yeah.
want to play Minecraft, or I want to go VR or whatever. Like, they're wanting to do things in the physical here and now, ride horses, take care of horses, all that kind of stuff. So how we got there, it is a journey, but I want to let people know how it can happen. It
Mm.
is possible. It's not like, oh, I can't do it because of this. No, it's possible. It's all about mindset. Change the mindset, change your thinking, change your life. I know it. One more thing before we go. Any last message or piece of wisdom you want to impart on anybody who's listening and watching this? And like, I want change, but I'm scared. I'm afraid of what might happen or what will come up for me.
Yeah. You're supposed to be scared. It's it's funny because you're supposed to be scared because your internal workings are aware that you're about to kill a part of yourself. Fear is a little bit of self-preservation, isn't it? Like, you say you want to change something in your life, but for something to change in your life, what actually has to change is you. So isn't it interesting that there is a part of you that will block you so you cannot grow?
Mhm.
Because if you grow, you're killing something, killing part of you. I believe it's that part of us that creates the fear in our lives. There's never going to be something that you're going to do, something you're going to try to achieve that's great that you won't have fear with. I mean, I still live with fear every day. We all do. You have to. Like, you're gonna. I mean, to me, if somebody's telling me, well, I want to change, but I'm scared, I'm like, what else is new? Anything you're going to do in this life is going to be scary. It's supposed to be. It's supposed to be because, well, you haven't done it yet. It's not another day for you yet. I found that if you start using that 3-letter word, that's probably the most powerful thing you could ever do. People don't realize the power of language nearly enough. And it has so much freaking impact on so many aspects of our lives. What if everything you were going to try and do, you put yet right at the back of it? What if you said, I'm going to start that business? I just don't know how I'm going to do it yet. I am going to make a ton of money. I just don't know how I'm going to do it yet. I have to get the skills because I just don't have them yet. It starts taking all of those things that could be deterrents and starts what? It starts shifting it to an opportunistic view. I don't have it yet. But there's a thought, right? Because yet implies that you might have it one day.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have it yet, what are you waiting for? Go get it. My biggest and one of my favorite quotes that changed the trajectory of my life, and I'm a big fan of quotes because you could take so much wisdom from so many different points in life and history, and you could just get it in one freaking line. And so quotes have changed the trajectory of my life. And the best one that I will leave all of you here with is my favorite quote from Aristotle. And he says, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. You cannot be great. You cannot achieve excellence until you do it every day. And it does not start with you being excellent. It starts with you having the heart and the mindset that you are excellent, that you have it and that the world just hasn't seen it yet. Because it's already within you. Your greatness, it's in there. It's waiting. It wants to be opened up. It wants to be unlocked. It wants you to believe it's there. You just have to go and be bold enough to take it.
You need people like us to pull it out of you. And
To
I
show
like
you what you're already missing.
exactly, exactly. And I love that yet words have so much power in this world. You know, words can start wars, words can end wars. You know, that's the power of vocabulary. Very, very important. Um, Vincent, Vinny, thanks, man,
Rob,
for coming on, brother. I appreciate it. I am going to have all your socials and a link to your website in the description below. Wherever this is going to be, it's going to be on YouTube, Spotify, Podbean. I'm going to be making a Rumble channel. I'll be putting it up on there as well. So if anybody has any more questions, feel free to reach out. And like I always say, it all starts with a conversation. Just have a talk, and that's when things will snowball. So
I
thanks.
love it. Thanks for having me, Rob.
Appreciate it. And we'd love to have you on again further down the road when your daughter's a little bit older and you can regale us in more stories about how she's progressed and how she's taken on some of Dad's traits and characteristics.
I'm always a fan to have some more good conversation.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, man. You take care. And everybody out there, thanks. We'll see you online. Peace.